Hey team, welcome back. So now we're going to start working on wiring things up so that we can start sending project objects to our backend. And we're going to start wiring up our project actions and also our reducer, our errors reducer, which is the only reducer that we're going to use for this specific action. Okay, so basically we pass on the form, send it back to the API. If the API, if it's good data, returns a project. If it's bad data, it returns an object with errors. If it's good data, we just go back to our dashboard. We're not going to wire this up yet, but we're just going to go back to it. And then if it's bad data, then what's going to happen is that we're going to include this in the reducer. We're going to dispatch the reducer to the store. And then as we start moving forward, then we're just going to connect that to the component, and then we're going to bring it back to the component. Okay, so basically this is the flow that we're going to start implementing. We're going to start with the project actions, and then we're going to start also wiring up the component so that we can actually get everything that we need. Okay, so let me just get this out of the way. And the first thing that we want to do is we want to create a folder called actions. New folder in the source directory, by the way, and we're gonna call it actions, just like that. In the action folder, we're gonna create two files. The first file is gonna be called project actions.js, and then the other one is gonna be called types. And we're gonna start working the types first. And by the way, I'm gonna try and keep an eye on the time here, because I know that Udemy doesn't like when videos are too long, and I know that any other platforms that I might be publishing this on also usually not friendly with super long videos. Anyway, in the types, we're going to define the type of action that we're going to perform. Okay, and at this very moment, the only reducer action that we're going to be working with in this use case is going to be the get errors. So we just have to type this: export constant get errors excuse me, and then in colon get errors, which is the first action that we're going to dispatch, or the first reducer that we're going to be creating. Okay, so with this out of the way, then we're going to start wiring up our errors reducer, which is a reducer that we're going to use whenever we have errors coming from the server as per our architecture. Okay, so we're going to create a new file, and it's going to be called error. Come on. Give me a second. And it's going to be called error reducer.js. Perfect. And this is the anatomy of a reducer if this is the first time that you have seen a reducer. The first thing that you do in a reducer is that you import the action type that you're going to use. In this case, we're going to import get errors from, and then we're going to use our IntelliSense to try and locate the actions folder here, and then types. Okay, and we're going to import that because we want this to be a constant. We don't want for this to be cluttered as like strings here. No, we wanna just import this just so it stays nice and clean. Okay, now with the errors, we always have an initial state as well, and this is a const too. Initial state, right, which is an empty object. And then we're going to do the export default function, and this function takes a state, which is going to be our initial state, which means at first we don't have any errors, and then the action that we're going to perform, action or actions. All right, then the way I learned this is to put this in a switch statement, which takes the action.type, okay, which basically takes the action that we're going to pass. Whenever we dispatch this from the project actions file, then we're passing basically this too, and that's how it knows what to do. So the first case that we're gonna wire up is the default. Okay, so basically the default state is just to just return the state as it is. Okay, that's the default action for this reducer. The other one, which is actually the main use case for this reducer, because we're gonna use this for all the other actions whenever we have errors, is to get errors. Basically get the errors from the server, and this is going to return the action dot payload. Okay, so in a nutshell, if we have errors from the server, this is going to return these errors, and then this is going to be dispatched to the store. Now, how do we hook this reducer onto the store? Well, we need to bring it to our root reducer, which is this index.js file that we hooked up in the previous lecture. Now, to do this, we need to include this code here, which is going to be errors, and then we're just going to import the error reducer that we just created, and we're going to do it with auto import. And again, if you don't have auto import, you have to type this out. Good. So now we have a reducer for errors. We're done with this. Then the next thing that we want to do is actually create our first action, right? Our first project action. And give me just a moment, because I really want to grab something here that I want to explain very thoroughly. Okay. Okay, cool. So in our project actions, which we have just created, we need to import Axios, okay, which is, as I mentioned, the library that we're going to use to talk to the backend. Okay, and we also need to import the types that we're going to be using as we start wiring them up. In this case, we're going to use the errors from types. Okay, now that we have this, we can create our first method, and here we're obviously going to enable this, or we're going to wire this up in a way that we can export each method individually. Okay, our first method is going to be the create project method. Okay, export const create project, and I'm going to use here an arrow function. So again, if this is confusing for you, you may need to brush up on your ES6 syntax. Okay, so here this arrow function is going to take two things. It's going to take the project object, obviously, and it's going to take a history parameter. This is what's going to allow us to redirect once we submit the form. Okay, and we have to pass this parameter too on the add project component. Remember I mentioned that when we use the route to render, when we use the React router DOM to render a component, then that passes onto the component a set of props, and amongst those props you get the history, and you also get the option to actually extract parameters out of it. Okay, so here we're going to pass the history so that then we can actually push the redirect onto dashboard once we successfully create a project. Okay, now the next thing that we're going to do is that we're going to pass it the dispatch, which is what we are going to be returning, what we're dispatching. Okay, so here I am going to use async await, and since you already have some knowledge on ES6, I do want to refresh your memory and say that async pretty much means that the function always returns a promise. Okay, and when you use it with await, basically it means that JavaScript will wait until that promise settles and returns its result. Okay, so basically this is a basic concept in ES6 This is not an ES6 primer, so I do expect you guys to either know this or go do your research and play with this on your own. It'll be worth it, I promise. Okay, so now that we have this, since we're gonna handle errors, the first thing that we want to do here is we're gonna perhaps wrap this in a try-catch block. Okay, and what we're gonna try is the following: const res, which is a server response, and then we're gonna await. Remember, async await axios.post, and then we're gonna call our API. And for this, we can actually take a look at Postman and see what's the route for us to post. And it's basically localhost API project. Cool. So here we can use double quotes and then put this route here. And remember, this route takes a valid project object. Okay, just like we did in Postman, we pass the route a valid project object in JSON format. Okay, which is basically what we're getting out of our add project component. I hope that this is super clear right now. Then we're going to, once we're done with this and we're trying, that's why we're using the try, right? Because we are expecting this to go well. If it goes well, then we're gonna take the history parameter from the component and we're gonna use the push history.push, and then we're gonna give me a second, push, and then we're gonna send the view, or we're gonna send the user back to the dashboard, because at that point we just wanna see our new project re-rendered. Okay, if there's an error, and this is where things are gonna get a little more interesting, then we're gonna use dispatch, and if there's an error, we're gonna dispatch this action. The type is gonna be the get errors, and what we're sending there is a payload. With res, right? Res dot data. I'm sorry, with errors, with the error response dot data. Data, not date. Okay. Perfect. So basically, what we're saying here is we're passing you an object, and if everything goes well, then take me back to dashboard, and then dashboard is going to have its own get projects method from that same file, and then that's going to load that's going to load all the projects. Now, if there's a problem, then it's going to render, or it's going to actually pass on to here whatever errors it got, right? And then this errors object is what's going to be passed on to the reducer, and then that's what we're going to extract onto our form so we can see our errors. All right, I know that's a mouthful, but make sure that you check out that diagram. I think I'm going to extract it and post it on this lecture notes so you can have some context there. All right, so we're well into this lecture, and we want to keep moving forward. So now that we have wired our actions, now we want to go on to our add project component, and I'm gonna start closing some things here before this gets any more complicated than it already going to be. Okay, so in our add errors project object, we're going to start by importing some stuff. Okay, the first thing that we're going to import is the prop types, and I am going to explain this as we use it, because there's no reason for me to start yapping around stuff if we haven't even touched those. Okay, prop types. Then we're gonna import connect. Okay, actually this needs curly braces. Connect from React Redux, and I'm pretty sure if you remember my explanation, this is how we're gonna connect to the state, and then we're also going to create the import the action that we just created, and I just want to make sure that I get the name right. Create project from, I believe it's going to be okay, so it's not out here. Actions, there it is, actions and project actions. Perfect. All right, so now that we have all the inputs that we need, then the next thing that we want to do is connect the component to the state. So in order for us to do this, first we have to wrap this in parentheses, and then this is where we are going to use the connect import. And then just for now, we're gonna pass this argument null. And this argument is basically how we map our state to our props. And we're going to want to map our state to our component properties once we start getting errors. But for now, I'm just going to leave that null. And then I'm going to pass here the create project action. All right? And I hope this makes a lot of sense. Then we're going to also set up the prop types. And right now, the only prop type that we have, and by the way, when you type prop types here, I made this mistake a lot when I was a beginner. It's not spelled the same way as how we imported it. It is actually with a lowercase p, okay? So make sure that you type it the same way I have it here. And then this is going to be an object, and then we're going to actually pass here the create project function. And then what you do here in prop types is that you set up prop types, and this prop type is going to be of type function, and it's also going to be is required. So basically this is like the way I understood this was when somebody said this is like a constraint, right? You're basically telling React that the create project function is a required function, or it's a required prop type for this component to work properly. That's in a sense how I made sense of this. It's basically setting like constraints, if you will, like this function needs to be there. All right. So now that we have this in place, all we need to do is come to the unsubmit function that we created a few videos ago, get rid of this, and then what we're going to do is that we're going to do this dot props dot create project, which is the function, and then we're going to pass it the new project that we have right here, and then we're going to pass the history, which is this dot history. No, I'm sorry, this dot props dot history. And remember, when we looked at the React dev tool, we saw that because we render this component with the router, then it passes this prop directly onto the component. That's why we can extract it here. Okay, and we're gonna be working with props very, very soon, I promise. Now that we have this wired up, I think we can start our server. Let's see how that goes. And actually, I'm getting an error here because I do have a problem with my syntax. My apologies. Down here, it is not an equal sign. It is actually a colon. I apologize for that. And then apparently I have some other errors. Huh. That's actually, let me see what I did wrong there. That's pretty weird. Let me go back to my project actions and see what I might have done there that is upsetting. Oh, I know what it is. Again, I missed this little guy here, okay? Because it's an arrow function that returns the dispatch function, okay? This is one of the things that Thunk allows us to do, is that it returns an actual function. And with this in place, let me see what else I did wrong. Jesus. I'm sorry, guys. But again, like, see, like, this is fat fingers, right? Like, it happens. Get errors. Oh, get errors. See, get errors. And just like you know what? I'm actually glad that all this happened to me, because if at the end of this lecture it's not working for you, then you can go back to my commit for this lecture, which is going to be a different branch. It's going to be on the resources, and then you can go and check where the mistakes were made. And also, I'm pretty sure you notice that this is very, very, very explicit, right? Like it actually helps you a lot. Okay, so now with this in place, I do expect that I can create a project from React. And by the way, stop all you're doing. Make sure that your server is running. Yes, make sure that your Java server is running. I'm gonna restart mine. My apologies, should have told you this. Open your IDE, run your server, okay? Because what we're going to do is that we're gonna send it here, and if all goes well, and actually if we have a problem, I'm just gonna save it for the next, I'm gonna solve it and save it for the next lecture. I'm going to connect to my database, and as you can see, I don't have anything there, right? So just know that, and run your server. Make sure it's empty, because now we're gonna send our first API. We're gonna make our first API call. I don't think I need Postman here. I think all I need is my browser. All right, so this is an exciting moment. Drums rolling. I'm gonna restart my React app, and there it is. I'm gonna bring it here, and then I'm going to try and create a valid project object. Do not try to create an invalid project object, because we haven't worked on the errors just yet. All right, and with this in place, whatever, I don't have any validation of the sort. Let's hope that this works. And it did not. Ha! And I know why it didn't work. It didn't work because even though we don't have security, our endpoint is not enabled for cross origin. Okay, but right now we're basically trying to hit our server from this server. And believe me, this is going to be a really quick fix. So again, your Java server should be running. I really apologize for how messy this is getting. I'm sorry if I'm confusing you, but we might as well take care of this now, because this is going to be a really good learning experience for you, okay? All we need to do in the Java server is go to the controller, and right here on the REST controller, right under request mapping, put this annotation, cross origin. And by the way, with every controller that we have, with every path that we have, that we know we're going to be hitting from the React application, we're going to use this annotation. Yes, there's a way to do this globally for the SpringBoot application, but I'm just going to do it at the controller level, because it's, to me, it's super sweet, the fact that we just have to put this here and it'll work. Okay, so if that didn't work for you, you need to do this. At cross origin. All right, then we're gonna restart the server. But this is good, because this is actually a really good thing, and I'll tell you why. This means that it already hit the endpoint. It hit our backend. So this is really good news. This actually means that we hit SpringBoot. So that means that on some level, our project action is working fine, and that's good news. So actually, this wasn't a complete failure. So we're gonna start this again, and actually now I'm really positive that I think this is gonna be successful this time around, and it takes us back to our project board. Remember, this is a dummy project. This is not what we have on the database, but now I think that we can safely open the H2 database, and I'm pretty sure that this is going to be there when we run the query. Actually, I'm so excited that I'm making dumb mistakes. And there we have it. So we sent our project from React, and just so you know that I'm not lying to you, I'm gonna literally type this, not lying. Not lying. Okay, this is a really cool moment right now. I know that you guys have been waiting, especially those of you that never worked with that REST API and the front end before. I know that you guys are really excited about this. And again, there you have it. All right, guys. So we accomplished a lot in this lecture. Really excited. In the next lecture, we're going to take care of the errors, and we're gonna actually use Redux and see what Redux is gonna do for us. Super excited. If you get confused or if you make any mistakes, go to the branch in this lecture, compare your code against mine, and remember my code is working. So I'm pretty sure, even though this was a somewhat messy lecture, I'm pretty sure it's gonna work fine. Remember, we touched a lot of files in one lecture. Hey, just in the React, we touched 4 files. It's very, very easy to lose track of that. So go to the branch, check out everything that changed here. And right now, the code is working perfectly. If you run into any problems, though, let me know. But you should be okay by just taking a look at the branch. Thank you very much, guys.